about the Cedula personal tax, or also known poll tax, which was another form of taxation imposed during Spanish period in the Philippines. What is Cedula? The Cedula is a poll tax, a fixed community tax paid by individuals, first imposed during Spanish colonial rule, and symbolized colonial control and revenue collection. The word cedula comes from Spanish, meaning certificate or documents. The cedula also a certificate that Filipinos had to carry as proof that they paid their personal tax. It was introduced in the late Spanish period and continued to be used during the American period. Every Filipino's adult was required to pay a certain amount annually in order to obtain this cedula. And the other forms of payment came in gold, chicken, textile, rice, and forced labor or servicio y polo. And without it, they could not travel, work legally, or access certain service. It introduced in 1884 under Governor General Domingo Moriones. During his governance in the Philippines, his administrative reforms aimed to improve infrastructure and governance, strengthening Spanish influence in the archipelago. It was a tax paid yearly by Filipino adults, which also served as proof of identity residence. It was required for official transactions such as travel, marriage, or signing legal documents. This system had both practical and negative effects. On one hand, the cedula became a form of identification and proof of residence. However, for many poor Filipinos, it became another burden because they had to pay for it regardless of their financial situation. It also symbolized colonial control since movement and participation in society were restricted without it. The cedula even became historically significant when Filipinos tore up their cedula at the cry of Pugad Lawin in 1896 to show their defiance against Spanish rule. The another positive side of cedula was the revenue for government and organization. It also serves as forms of identification, which in some ways help organize the colonial system. However, the another negative effects of cedula was a burden, especially to a Filipino who could barely afford to pay it. It was a symbol of inequality because the rich could easily comply, but the poor suffered consequence if they failed to pay. When we look up to a cedula personal tax and compare it to the modern day taxation in the Philippines, we can see similarities and difference. Till today, we can still pay taxes such as the income tax, value-added tax, and field property tax. However, today the taxes supposedly support the needs of citizens, such as education and health care. This day, we still use cedula or community tax certificates, but they serve a more administrative purpose and are not as restrictive as during Spanish times. Modern taxes are collected more systematically by the Bureau of Internal Revenue. This shows us how something that once symbolized oppression can evolve into a normal civic duty when done fairly. It also teaches us that taxation must not only raise funds but also respect the rights and dignity of citizens. The lesson that we can learn from the history that taxation should always be fair. It must not be a burden. The cedula was used not only to collect the taxes but also to restrict Filipinos' freedom. They couldn't travel or work without it. This reminds us that while taxes are necessary for a country's growth, they must be implemented with justice, equality, and respect for citizens' rights. Taxes should unity a nation and progress, not divide people through oppression.